Welcome, Tadas, to our Programmer Hour podcast, and thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's really nice to have you. And obviously, we know all about you, but would you like to introduce yourself for our audience in case they don't already know about you?
Sure. So my name is Tadas. I am a YouTuber first, I like to think, but I'm also a Google GDE for Flutter and Dart. I mainly create content about Flutter. And currently I work at this company called Agora as a Developer Evangelist, which is pretty much marketing and creating content on YouTube, teaching about Agora. So, and it's also based with Flutter. So pretty much everything I do is Flutter based. And yeah, that's about it.
That sounds really good. And definitely there are a few things we would like to ask you about over there. But let's start at the beginning.
So we followed your journey a little bit, and we came to know that you started with traditional embedded C, and then you moved on to work with Flutter. So we want to know how this change happened.
So it's kind of a interesting story. So back in college and everything, I've always been very entrepreneurial. I went to school and I got a computer engineering degree for those that are curious. So very average route, nothing crazy. I see a lot of people online that are doing a lot of amazing stuff without a degree, but I went the old-fashioned way. I got an engineering degree, but the whole time I was learning it, I actually only took 2 computer programming courses throughout my whole studies. They were Intro to CS and then Data Structures and Algorithms, which I actually almost failed. And I decided from then probably I don't really want to do something programming related. So I was actually looking mostly into VHDL and Verilog, which is a hardware language that's how you write, when people design processors, they use those languages to write the designs for those. So that's where you write in the AND gates and all that stuff. So that's where I wanted to go. But then I had an internship at this company called Navistar, where we did the embedded C, and I actually ended up really liking it. And the whole time in college, I was always working on my own projects, trying to make something work, get a little business going or some sort of entrepreneurial thing. So I was learning coding. I built websites and I built Android apps, I think. Nothing really came out of it. I just, tried a lot of things. Nothing worked. But I did learn a lot. And that continued while I was working as an embedded C programmer. I think the reason I stuck with the reason I went with mobile apps instead of websites is because websites, I actually built a whole social network website back while I was working in that last company. And then I ran into this one bug that I couldn't figure out how to fix. And it was to deal with multi-threading and chats. I still remember because I don't know how to fix it. And multi-threading in JavaScript, that's a complex topic. So then I switched to looking into creating a mobile app because mobile apps are a little simpler. There's not as many pieces all over the place. And that's where I started with other frameworks, Ionic. And then I was looking into different ones. I started with Flutter and I saw there's not much Flutter content. And then one thing led to another. I started making YouTube videos. I started creating content on Twitter a little bit. And then that just turned into this new career path for the most part. I realized I was enjoying it more than working at my last job. I actually stopped so at that last job, it was for a trucking company. So it was very safety critical. We built trucks, right? So for trucks, you have to make sure every little detail is secure and no code goes checked by 4 people. Yeah. So the process was just very tedious. Most of the time, I'd say 80% of the time, my job was writing Word documents, and that was just boring. And what I was doing at home with YouTube and Flutter was just way more interesting. So I decided to switch things up a little bit.
Well, that sounds like quite a journey. So you have really worked from really low level programming to web development, and then writing mission critical code, for example, for the trucking company, which has to be really like well tested and well maintained, and then from there to web development, and then to trying different frameworks for mobile development. That really sounds great.
You also mentioned Ionic. So you worked with Ionic in the past. And then Ionic, as we all know, like it's a competitive framework and it's kind of like in competitor with Flutter.
And we are Angular lovers, by the way. So we do like Ionic. So
So why did you switch to Flutter when you were already working with Ionic?
I'll be honest, I didn't really like Ionic. So it wasn't bad. It obviously made like programming a lot easier. I think at the point when I switched was before there was Ionic native. I think there's Ionic native now where it actually compiles into native code, right? Mm-hmm. So at that point, it was still a web view over your applications. So that was the big, I was looking for something that would build to native code. And at that point, I think there was React Native and Flutter. I personally hate Facebook, so that's why I didn't go with React Native. And I'm happy with that decision because Flutter ended up the one that I like better.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, yes, I think Ionic 3 or 4 had that issue that they didn't really make native applications, but after that they improved that. And especially if you have experience with Angular, definitely Ionic is the way to go. But if not, I think all of them are great. And at that time, I'm sure that Flutter was a better option. Now learning that Ionic didn't even have native applications, so that totally makes sense. So from what I understand, Ionic was more of a web view, just a browser opening inside a mobile app.
Yep, exactly.
Okay,
but that was a long time. So I started with Flutter before it was actually released. So over 3 years ago was when I was working with Ionic. It was just pretty much a website within an app. Like, I mean, you couldn't tell it was a website, but it wasn't native code.
Okay.
I'm sure it's gotten pretty good since then, but I haven't looked back thoroughly.
Yeah. So we have an interesting question for you. So we get comments like this a lot. Like, what should we learn? Like on our YouTube videos, people, even if the topic is anything, people ask, what should we learn to get a job? So do you think that people should focus on Flutter, or would you recommend something else that they should focus on if their goal is to find a job?
Of course, Flutter. Flutter's the best. What else do you need? Nah, in all seriousness, I've heard, I don't know if you guys know Danny Thompson on Twitter. He's given this advice multiple times, and I think I agree with it for the most part. You should, if you're looking for a job specifically, like always have a purpose with whatever you're learning. If you're looking for a job specifically, I guess nowadays with remote jobs, it doesn't really matter. But like he always gave the advice, look for jobs that are within your area and what is most popular there, because learning one programming language versus another one doesn't really matter. Like whenever you learn that first programming language, switching to a different one is not going to be as difficult. So just, I mean, learning whatever's in demand at that point, and then time, maybe search. I don't know where to search. I haven't really looked for a job conventionally in a long time, but I'm sure there's like LinkedIn. You can see whichever has the most results probably give you the best chances to find a job. And I'm sure most of them are in web development. So like
for sure,
like React and web development is probably the most popular ones. But I mean, at the end of the day, if for example, if you really enjoy working with Flutter, I know there's Flutter jobs out there too. You can definitely find one. And just whatever you enjoy, whatever's in demand.
Yeah, I think you summarized it very well by saying that, if you have an interest in something like Flutter, for example, you can definitely learn that. But if you go to LinkedIn and just search React, and you get 500 job results, and if you search maybe Node, and you get 1,000 job results, and your only focus is to get a job, you should probably learn Node at that time. So I think that summarizes it very well. That's great.
But to ask you a more specific question, so like if someone wants to do app development, be it like Android or iOS, so is it a good idea to start with Flutter? Is Flutter also beginner friendly?
I think so. I think it definitely is. So working with Flutter, you won't know the ins and outs of Android as much and iOS, but you will get like a little bit of an overview. You have to work with like the build.gradle and Android manifest a little bit. You kind of get a little handle of it. And I think Flutter is an easy way to start. Same thing with React Native, especially like if you're a web developer, like going through React Native is I'm assuming very natural. With Flutter, I think it makes it even easier because that's actually been one of my biggest problems with Flutter as well. I think it's a little too easy because some people, they start developing applications and then they don't really understand what's going on and what they're doing. Because
Okay.
if you guys are unfamiliar with Flutter, it's literally just a tree of widgets. So you have like your application, then you have like your pages, and then within each page you have other widgets, right? That's like the gist of it. And you can build out anything you really want with that tree of widgets. And like a lot of people, they might not be good developers. They might not know the Dart language, which Flutter is built with, and they are building apps that they work through like examples, copy pasting from Stack Overflow, and then they run into an issue that they're trying to do, and they ask questions that they should know if they're building an app as complex as they're building. But I think it's good to start, but I would highly recommend you learn Dart development or even any other type of application, any other type of language before you go deep into Flutter. I think I kind of go the same way with like any frameworks, like web frameworks or anything. Learn the underlying languages first before you try to like dig into React, right, or whatever other language it is. Once you understand the language, I feel like you should be able to go into Flutter well. And like if you're a good developer in any other language, I think Dart is very similar to like JavaScript and all those. I think you'll be able to pick it up quick and be able to start well.
Yeah, okay. I think this issue happens with a lot of frameworks now that give you like a lot of features just to start with, like React, Angular, and even in backend, there's a framework for PHP called Laravel. It just gives you like 100 things out of the box. And then people just start and they're like, okay, I can build APIs now. I can create websites now. But as soon as complex things start hitting them, like authentication or saving cookies or making a website perform faster in any way, they don't understand because sometimes they just haven't really figured out the basics of JavaScript or anything like that. So definitely, as Francesco says, that fundamentals are fundamentals. So they're really important. And without that, any programming language or framework wouldn't really make sense.
Yeah, I think it applies to any domain because it's the same kind of conversation we had with Kevin Powell as well regarding CSS. So nowadays people rarely anyone uses vanilla CSS. They all use like frameworks like Bootstrap and stuff like that. So, but whenever we run into problems with these frameworks that we use, we can't really solve them because we really don't understand the real CSS and the complexity. So yeah, it's the same kind of concept. But a good thing that you mentioned the Dart language, because I know that, okay, you need to learn Dart first in order to work with Flutter. Okay, that's kind of a prerequisite. But is that the only purpose of Dart, or is Dart? Can we use Dart with like other applications or other domains as well?
So I think Dart is trying to be a universal language, just like JavaScript, where it works with anything. I've seen people build backends with it. I've seen like people build all sorts of stuff with Dart, but it's definitely not as popular anywhere else as it is with Flutter. And I haven't even built anything. I think I built like one or two just like Dart terminal apps, but yeah, I haven't really built anything outside of Flutter with Dart. But I do know they want to, and they've been pushing a lot of some like cloud stuff with Dart even.
Okay, so it's a good potential competition for JavaScript. So we can build backend as well as front end using the Dart language.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's where they're going for. I mean, JavaScript obviously like owns that whole sector. Who knows if Dart will make a dent in it, but that's what they're trying to do, I think.
Yeah, it's amazing to see how many things Google focuses on. Google has its own web framework called Angular, and they are focusing so much on that. They're building, like they publish new major version of Angular every 6 months. And on the other hand, they're also working on Flutter, which is also, I think Flutter is also by Google, as far as I knew. And even they're building new things. And now I think we can even create websites with Flutter. So it's just amazing to see how many things they can focus on, which are completely different and sometimes solve the same purpose. So let's
They
see
have a
what
lot of
happens.
they have a lot of competitors within Google itself. It seems like,
Exactly.
and then like they had like YouTube Music, Google Music, and stuff like that. Like
Yeah.
even products that they release.
Mhm.
I don't know what the strategy is, but I mean, Google's doing fine.
Yeah, maybe.
I think it's a marketing strategy too, because they're creating a sense of competition in the market and like making the user feel that they have choices. Well, in fact, there's no choice. It's the same parent company. You buy anything, the money is going to go to
Yeah.
them. So,
But the underlying fact is all of them are open source. So it's
Yeah.
not even a strategy, I guess, to make more money. It's just
Who knows what they're doing?
yeah, who
Yeah,
knows?
but
Who knows? Yeah, obviously.
They probably know
Okay.
something we don't.
Yeah, definitely. Okay,
yeah.
let's transition into something else now. What
Yeah,
do you
to
think?
steer the conversation into a different direction than Flutter now, into another important direction, which is content creation.
Hmm.
So we know that you have a YouTube channel, you create a lot of content as well. So tell us a little bit about your journey on how you got into content creation, and yeah, what motivates you.
So I started. So again, I started with Flutter first before I started creating content, and like I said, I started before Flutter even came out to like the public release. It was still in beta at that point, and the best way I learn is on YouTube. Like I learn from videos a lot better than I do from articles or documentation. I like videos that break it down for you and it helps me understand things, right? And at that point, there wasn't much content at all on Flutter Online. There was definitely some people doing like Flutter tutorials, but obviously a couple people can't cover all the things that are going wrong, right? And it was
Yeah.
very hard to find solutions to the problems that I was having. So I kind of decided like, well, I've always kind of wanted to have a YouTube channel, right? But I never really did it because I don't know, I'm embarrassed of it or whatever. But at that point, I was like, I'm spending all this time trying to learn something. Like, why not make a YouTube video teaching people how to do it? And the kind of my little hump to get over, because I mean, I set myself a challenge when I first started. I was going to release one video a week about a project that I was going to build, and I wanted to teach people how to build like a quality like project that you can release to the app stores, because I didn't see anything like that on YouTube. Like that's what I struggled with a lot, like figuring out how to release to the app stores, figuring out how to like even set a project up, and like how to create a little architecture for the project. So that's how I started. I wanted to teach people how to create a quality project because I couldn't find it myself. And yeah, I started. I didn't really think much was going to come out of it, but then like people started subscribing a little bit, and I think it took me, was it like 40 or 50 days to get the first 100 subscribers, which I mean seems slow, but at that point like it was crazy. And I was like, holy crap! Like,
It doesn't. It doesn't
It
seem
doesn't seem
slow.
slow, especially for a niche. I mean, we are definitely a very small YouTube channel, and we can definitely like understand what you mean. And also, I think that's great because we think the way you opened the YouTube channel, I think that's great because we totally believe that the best way to learn something is to teach it.
Yeah.
So if you have to teach or make a video, you will obviously learn more basics. You will obviously go through all the things you need to make a video on it. So I think it's a great way to learn, and then you also create videos and other people can learn from you. So I think it's a great thing, and we have the same philosophy on our YouTube channel. That is one of the reasons we created. So yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Right, so
Also,
like,
it
yeah,
shows.
go ahead.
Go ahead.
All right. So that like the way I started wasn't necessarily to learn, right? It was to kind of teach what I couldn't figure out and help people. But that definitely, after that first series of building that whole application, that's definitely what it transitioned to, because that's how I forced myself to learn Flutter and become like better at it, because I had decided I kept that schedule of one video a week, but I changed up what topics, and like I always chose topics that I didn't know before I chose it, right? So I decided I'm gonna release a video on this day, and at that I set a schedule kind of like 2 weeks to learn. So I kept like 1 week to learn and then 1 week to create a video. So I had like an offset, right? And I would just pick a topic that I didn't know, and I went through like the whole process. And I mean, that's sure a big part of how I became a GDE for Flutter is just because of all the learning that happened through this Flutter YouTube journey.
For sure, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. So the thing that I wanted to add before was that also, like you said, that you found a problem and you wanted to find a solution to that problem, and that's how you began. Like you created your YouTube channel, and it was kind of like the same approach for us as well, because we were trying to sort some things and like we couldn't find a good video on internet. So that's the problem that we had too. And then we tried to create video and push like more content, like basically to find answers and to help people when we find those answers.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And sometimes we circle back to our own videos. like let's say we created a video on something, and like we are like, okay, now how do we do that? Oh, we created a video on it 1 year ago. Let's go back and see that. So
yeah, exactly. So that's kind of our motivation too. Yeah. So it's great.
I've done that multiple times as well.
Exactly. That's the secret. We do it for ourselves. Yeah. I'm kidding. You mentioned a couple of times about being a GDE, Google Developer Expert, right? So first of all, what that is for someone who don't know what the GDE is, and then how you got into it.
So GDE is a program from Google. It's called the Google Developer Experts. And it's for most people, you have to go through like interviews and stuff to get into it. And it's pretty much for people that are helping the community learn Flutter. And so like experts in that specific field, just to kind of give them recognition and they give us a little bit of insights on what Google is working on with Flutter. And we kind of get to help out, like not lead, but we have like we have monthly meetings, I think like 2 of them, where we could give our input into what we want to see come out of Flutter and where we want the Flutter framework to go and what we want the community to do, pretty much. So you kind of get a little bit of insight into Google and a little bit of say into where Flutter goes. And you also get a little bit of recognition from Google that you are an expert in the field.
Wow. That's so really great.
Is it like a core team of experts at Google so is it like a position that you could apply for if you have experience with Flutter, or do they find you and they hire you?
And is this only for Flutter or for all Google products?
So there's Angular GDEs, there's Firebase GDEs, there's all sorts of Google product GDEs, and there's not really an application, and it's not an employment by Google, so it's just kind of like recognition by Google that you kind of know what you're working with. And so the way I got in is I reached out to the community manager of Flutter, and I asked like how to get in, and then she's like, "Oh yeah, you definitely qualify for it." So she brought me in.
Wow, that's really great. That's really great. I didn't know about the GDE thing, and I am an Angular fanatic, so I will try to do the same as what you did. I'll try to reach out the Angular GDE team.
Yeah, it's more like a forum, right?
It's like I think it's more like Docker Captain. Like there's no exam for it. There's nothing, but you get insights, and I think you get to maybe also tell them what should be added. And I think they take it into account, so one way or the other. So that's really great.
I think Dr. Captain is a really good example of that. From what I've heard from Francesco, is a very similar thing. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
That sounds great. Congratulations on that.
Yeah.
It sounds it sounds great.
Thank you. Yeah. So far, so good. I don't even complain about the program.
Yeah.
Great. You also talked about your job. So you work at Agora.io, if I heard that correctly. Okay. So, and you said that you were a developer evangelist at Agora.io, right? So what does that job entail? Because like I've heard that for the first time. Is it something similar to developer advocate, or is it different?
Yeah. So I actually like the developer advocate name better, but it's a very similar thing. I think technically the evangelist role has a more broad definition. Developer advocates are maybe more tied into creating content. Developer evangelist is the general idea is you're helping out the community with, any Agora issues or helping them learn things with Agora, right? So developer, my role specifically, I think is pretty much the same as a developer advocate. I create content about Agora. I help people like if they have any questions with Agora, I try to help answer those questions. And my personal, like, I also built a package for Agora that helps people use Agora more simply. So it's just, the role is very broad, but for the most part, you're just helping developers with Agora.
Okay, that's great. So it doesn't sound like a 9 to 5 job, or is it? So like, do you have a fixed schedule, or is it like a full-time job, or is it like you have some projects to do and you create videos and maybe help the community?
Go on forums and answer to questions probably that people have posted related to Agora, or
So my position is a full-time position.
Okay.
I don't really, I mean, the way me and my boss have it set up, we don't really have like specific hours I need to be on there, but like, yeah, it's
That's
technically a
awesome.
full-time position. I'm doing it full-time.
Okay, that's great. That's great. So Dev Evangelist, like it sounds great, and I'm sure that like on hearing what you just told us, it doesn't sound like a repetitive job where you have to fill in Word documents, something like that. So how can a developer get into those roles? Because I don't think there are 1,000 openings right now for Dev Evangelist, and I'm sure you need some kind of different background for that. So how would you recommend a person can apply for something like that?
So that's tough. Like, the reason I got this whole role was because of a big step up, a big leg up in order for to become a developer evangelist or advocate is obviously having a social media following and being good at marketing.
Makes
Because
sense.
this role is technically under the, I'm not technically an engineer or a developer. I'm under the marketing team. So even though I do end up writing a lot of code, and I mean, we have a package that we built that's like production ready, like production level package for Flutter. It's technically not a developer role. It's technically a marketing role. So
I understand. Okay.
I think
Okay.
just being a mix of having experience, being able to show that you know how to build projects, you know how to do in whatever field you're working with. For me specifically, Flutter, obviously, and having some marketing skills doesn't necessarily mean having a social media following, but I think that's just the example that makes the most sense here. There's a lot of traditional marketing, right? And if you're a good developer with good traditional marketing skills, I'm sure you'd be very handy. But for me, social media marketing is like the easiest way for people to kind of go into that.
For
right?
sure, for sure. I think like if you create content related to development, it kind of gives like that's kind of your interview. Like it proves that you can do it. So I kind of get your point.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, my interview was, I mean, it was a legit interview, but like a lot of showing like just my online presence and everything definitely made the whole process like simpler and like showed them that I know at least what I'm talking about when it comes to Flutter.
No, that totally makes sense. It's kind of like your portfolio, like your resume, basically. Not the interview, but basically, your resume.
That's a better explanation.
Exactly.
So Kritika and I believe that having some kind of social media presence for all developers is definitely important, if not necessary. And it might be having a blog, having a Twitter account, or YouTube, having a YouTube channel, anything like that. What do you think about that? Would that help someone?
So I definitely wouldn't say you need to have a social media account because some people don't really like it, but I would definitely highly recommend it to a lot of people. Even like we talked about earlier, starting a blog or like something as simple as that. That's not very like social media, not typical social media. You don't have people,
go on Instagram or TikTok.
Yeah. There's no crazy algorithms that are trying to get you and stuff like that.
Exactly.
So like even something simple as a blog, like you'll just learn so much going through the process, and at the same time you might be teaching people. And even I think even like using social medias like Twitter, for example, I'm a big fan of. That like if you use it correctly, it's very powerful and I think positive for the most part. There's obviously people that are negative on there, but just don't give them too much attention and you'll be okay. But I've met so many great people like through my Twitter journey, and like that's actually how I got this job in the first place. Like someone that was at Agora noticed my like post on Twitter, reached out to me, and then that's what led to this. So there's a lot of great opportunities on social media, and a lot of fun people to meet, and a lot of people you could help, and also at the very least you could learn a lot from it.
Definitely. I mean, and we are sure that as the time goes on, this will be more important with the time. So if you start doing it today, so
you already have an edge.
Exactly.
And the companies are taking care of the negative people. So like YouTube is trying to get rid of the dislike button as well. They're trying to do that. So
at least every company except Facebook.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the removal of dislike button, but yeah, they're trying stuff.
Exactly. I mean, we know that some people get too into like the negative comments and then they get disheartened. So I think for some people it's definitely good. But yeah, I mean, for sure, having social media presence in some way or the other, no matter what your field is, if you are a developer or anyone else, it's great. And maybe you can even create TikTok videos dancing and coding. I mean, I don't know, but
there you go.
That will be something new.
Exactly.
So like there's like a lot of platforms today that we can develop blogs on. So you have websites like Substack and WordPress, Substack, and
Medium.com.
Yeah. So basically all these websites. So do you have a preference, or which one do you think is like good to start with?
So I will start with Medium probably, because I've seen it has the biggest payouts out of all of them. And it also helps your stuff get noticed the most. But I think this is going to be like kind of a self plug, but not really, because I don't really work on it anymore. But I think the best solution is to post on multiple of them, because as long as you handle the, what's that link?
Canonical link.
The canonical URL. Yeah. Like that shouldn't be a problem. And me and one of my friends actually built a website that lets you cross post to Dev2 and Medium. And it's called Krossa.io, Krossa.io. But we stopped development on it, so it's just kind of chilling there. If you want to post to Medium and Dev2, it's there, but we haven't really done much with it. We might bring it back. We might bring it back one day, but we don't have it yet, because we definitely saw the problem. Like, cross posting isn't easy; it's kind of a pain. And we thought, like, to ease that pain, this would be a good product to have. But we didn't get many users, so we stopped.
For sure, but it sounds good. We will at least add a link to that in the description, and maybe we'll even try your website. It definitely solves a problem.
Yeah, is it still up and running though? Because you said you're gonna bring it back. It's not.
So it's up and running. Like me and my friend, I don't know if you guys know Robert Brunhage, whatever, how do you pronounce his last name? But me and him built it together, and like we use it sometimes to post our own content. But like we actually, when we launched it, we had like I think 200 or 300 users, which is a lot. But like that was only for the trial version, and nobody really converted, so we just kind of stopped putting energy into it. And
but at least it sounds great. And I think in the first or the second sentence of this interview, you said that you have always been kind of an entrepreneurial mindset person. So it definitely like builds up to that. Do you do other things as well? Like from what we have heard, your schedule looks like jam-packed. Like you are creating YouTube videos, you're active on Twitter, other social media platforms, and you are Dev Evangelist at a company, which is a full-time job. You are a GDE. What else do you do?
So the main thing right now, that's pretty much it. I've been slacking on YouTube recently, also, so it hasn't been as jam-packed. I just bought a house and just got back from vacation last week. So like it's been a lot of. The past month has been a lot of busy with the renovations and things like that, because we bought a fixer-upper and it needed a lot of work. Now it's looking a little better, but like it took a lot of time and effort to get them looking decent. So that was a big thing. But now that I'm getting back into a schedule, like the goal is to start releasing content a lot more on YouTube again. And the big thing that I'm doing is I'm building a unicorn startup that's going to sell to Amazon for $1 trillion.
I saw that video that you started a unicorn startup, and then I didn't see the other video, but you said my startup failed or something like that.
Yeah, the second one was definitely clickbait. It didn't. So I started. The idea was to create take the community, right, and create just work on a project with them. For them, they get to learn, from me and from Robert, who's also a Flutter GDE. So they get to learn with us and work on a project, which I think is fun. And I just kind of wanted to work on a project with the whole community. I feel like that's just something I really wanted to do. So when I first launched it, the idea was that I was going to talk to every person and basically have a interview, but it's not a real interview. I just wanted to talk to them, just to see who's joining, get to know everybody, get to know more of the people around there. And I set a limit of 2 weeks for those interviews. So I think there was 6 to 8 a day for a 2-week period, and it got booked up within a couple hours. And I was like, okay. And then I was getting messages in my DMs and everything hey, I really want to join this, but there's no times left to schedule an interview. And I did a couple of them. I got kind of annoyed because I think I did 3, and 2 out of the first 3 didn't show up. So I'm like, all right, this is wasting my time. The people that actually want to do this didn't get to go in. So I decided to open source it and just full open everything. And that's why it failed. The project failed, but I mean, not really. It's just open source. Okay. I just wanted a title to get some views.
All the best for your $1 trillion startup. I mean, I really hope that it makes you a lot of money, and we would like to get a piece of that.
So the idea
is you all the best.
Yeah. So the idea is I'm splitting equity between all the contributors, depending on how much they contribute. They get points, and
that's very smart.
So 40% of the equity will, if it ever makes money. I mean, this is all just kind of a running joke. I mean, it might not end up ever making money, right? When you never know with startups. But just if it ever makes money, and I thought it would be more fun, they get the share split between, depending on how much they contributed. So I've been planning to live stream every day. I've been doing it this week. So I've been live streaming in the morning, working on that project with some of the people. And we got around 5 to 6 people that are actively working on it. And then, I mean, people here and there that are coming in for an issue or two. So it's going great. Yeah. That project is going great. That's kind of the big thing I'm doing.
It really sounds great as well. I mean, I'm really all the best, and we would like to check into it, and maybe we can also contribute, because who doesn't want to be part of a $1 trillion company? And as you said, I mean, to be on a serious note, as you said, you never know, right? You never know if it doesn't work, and maybe it works. So exactly.
Yeah, I just wanted a way to for people that are excited and want to contribute a lot, just in case anything ever happens, and in case it becomes profitable, that they do get rewarded for it. And I feel if you don't, if you don't start trying at the beginning, how do you really know who put in the work? Some people might put in a lot of work at the beginning, and you might not make any money until 5 years down the road. You're going to forget about that guy at the beginning. But this way, hopefully everybody gets rewarded for all the work they put in.
For sure.
Yeah, sure. We're going to check it out. And we can also put a link to it in the description.
For sure.
Yeah. Is it a GitHub repository, right? Because it's open source, or are you using any other? Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah, there's a GitHub repository.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so there's a link down in the description of this video if you're watching it. And if you want to be a part of that $1 trillion startup, you know what to do.
There you go.
All right, perfect. So now we're going to move on to our last section, which is called the Coder's Quattro. So in this section, we ask 4 same questions to all our guests, and we'd like to hear your responses to them. So the first one is, what framework / technology / language do you think a new developer should learn?
That's a tough one. Flutter, of course. No, so it has to be a framework, right?
It could be like a framework, technology, or any language if you prefer. So basically, the idea is just to give you a bit context. So I'm going to give you a hint so that it's not tough for you to answer anymore. Okay. So So the idea is that if someone is just starting out in the field of computer science and programming, what is the one thing that you would suggest them to learn so that they get hands on, and then they're like able to get a job or something, and then maybe as they progress they can, continue working on anything else. Yeah.
So you can tell anything, language or a framework or technology, anything you think
So
one should.
I would definitely like steer away from a framework being the first thing you learn, because like what we talked about earlier, like frameworks, that's like I feel like the next step. But like if you were to pick a direction, I really think you could pretty much go with anything that's semi-popular, right? You could find jobs in there, and even just like let's say I'm biased and I tell you guys Dart and then Flutter afterwards, right? Is what I would want you to learn. And I don't think that's bad, because like if you do learn Dart, you're really good at Dart, you can move over to JavaScript pretty easily, right? I do think Flutter has a big future ahead of it, and I think like with Flutter Web becoming more and more stable, Flutter Desktop becoming more and more stable, I do think that's a pretty good direction to go in it if it's something you're interested in. I think if you do know you want to be a web developer specifically, work with just the web stuff, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, leads you into React and then Next.js maybe. I know Angular is popular too, right? That's a good direction to go to. There's you can't really go wrong with like definitely start with like the languages, so HTML, CSS, JavaScript if you want to go into web, and then Dart if you want to go into mobile or cross-platform.
Yeah, that's really well put.
Okay, fair enough.
But
yes.
I got another thing I want to add to that. So the one thing I used to recommend a lot, actually, but I kind of forgot about it, is I really think learning C is beneficial. If you learn C, you're gonna get very low level into programming, and like the stuff that you're learning with JavaScript or Dart, you'll be able to understand it a lot better, I think, because you kind of understand what the underlying things are doing. Like with C, you have to manage memory. You have to, I guess pointers doesn't really matter.
Exactly.
But like memory management, for example, like when you have to allocate resources and then deallocate them, like similar here where you got to deconstruct stuff and all that type of stuff. You understand, I think, those concepts a little bit better.
That's a great point, and I have to tell you that is a very unique answer. All our guests told that JavaScript, that was a common answer, but you really put it very well. Like fundamentals would really be good if you learn C. If you want to go to web development, JavaScript is the way. But you also mentioned that Dart and Flutter is also a great way to start. So maybe our listeners can choose what they want to do now instead of hearing JavaScript everywhere. So that's great.
Yeah, the only reason I might not recommend C to start is because obviously there's a lot less. Actually, there's a lot of jobs in C, but definitely a lot less than, JavaScript or even probably any mobile or Flutter or anything like that.
For sure.
Yeah.
It's true that there's a lot of jobs, but is it really true that they're going to hire like beginner level C, like someone with beginner level C expertise? Because I think it's more like they would prefer more like very expert and like people with a lot of years of experience to understand C, because it's already, I believe, in my opinion, it's already a very complex language to deal with as compared to the rest of the options there are out there. So
So I wouldn't say so. I would say like, so I remember when I got that internship was directly into C programming, and I only took 2 courses and none of them were C, right? I actually think C is probably the easiest language out of all the new languages. I'll give that.
Okay.
I think it's a lot easier than JavaScript and even Dart, I would say. It's very, if you're someone that likes math, like everything makes sense in C. You're like, whenever you have to think about every little thing you're doing, and like, you have to deal with pointers and stuff like that. But once you like understand what a pointer is, like you're just grabbing stuff from this location, right? Everything makes sense. Everything has like this amount of bits. You can kind of picture it within the computer, what's going on in C. With Dart, and like JavaScript, like some of the crazy functions there, like you don't really know what's going on, like list rearrangements and things like that. You kind of get like lost there. Like if there's like sort functions and stuff like that, like what's actually happening under the hood, you don't really know. But if you do it with C, you know you have to take something, put it in this spot, like reorder it, check if it's bigger than the other thing. Like you really understand what's going on. So I think, yeah.
That's a great point.
That makes sense. And also like the other programming language and the more recent programming languages are like based on C. So like at the compiler level and at the system level, they're actually based on like, okay.
But I have to give a disclaimer to Kritika, to you, and to all the viewers that C was the first language that I learned, but I really suck at C. Like, like the fundamentals and everything that you talked about were actually very helpful. But at this point in my career, I wouldn't like to work with C, just to be honest. And I think it's not because it's a bad language. It's just that because I suck at it, I kind of feel that it's a difficult language to again go back to, because once you are so familiar with list rearrangements or things like that. Yeah, but that's just me.
Yeah, C definitely makes a lot of things a lot harder. Like in order to do something like that is a lot more difficult in C. But like, I mean, with embedded software and things like that, that's probably the most common use case for C, right?
Yes,
is embedded software. So like, I mean, you're just taking data from one thing, right? Doing whatever you need to do to that data and then storing it in memory somewhere. And as long as you understand the whole part, I think it makes sense. It makes more sense than if I run into a bug in Dart or JavaScript or something, I think they're usually harder to debug than in C.
For sure. Sure.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. When you don't understand something, you find it hard, and I think that's the case with us.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
and I guess maybe it wouldn't be easier to debug in C because there's no good debuggers and stuff. But like, if you had no debuggers or anything, if you had no extra tools, C would be like easier to follow the path, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right.
Okay, perfect. So moving on to the next question. So when you want to learn something new, what do you prefer, watching videos or reading the documentation? But I think I already know the answer to this one because you already mentioned that you prefer watching videos, but we're going to need you to validate.
So I definitely prefer watching videos, but I think like now at this stage, I wouldn't say I know everything in Flutter, right? There's definitely still a lot of things I don't know, but like if we're talking about like app architecture and different methods for architecting apps and like very niche specific things for a specific function. Like if you want to find out the parameters of a function, you're not going to go to a YouTube video for it, right?
For sure.
So it's been more common that I go to documentation than videos, just because, I mean, the stuff is very specific.
Very specific, yeah.
Yeah, very particular or searchable.
I think it's the same for us. Like most of the people who are our guests, they said that they prefer documentation over videos. But Kritika and I, if we are learning something new, we prefer watching a video of 20 minutes that will maybe highlight the features, and we don't have to read the complex documentation, because for some libraries, the documentations are not great. But yeah, definitely when you want to learn something in particular, I totally agree that documentation is the way to go.
Yeah, Udemy courses. That's the best way for me.
Yeah, for sure. 100% agreed. Like we learned a lot from Udemy.
Yeah, I've been learning Udemy and Swift, and Udemy has been the thing that has gotten me to there.
That's great.
Totally, yeah. We started our web development journey with Udemy as well, and like if you want to learn something quick and for free, then there is like great YouTube channels like Free Code Camp and Okay. Perfect. So moving on to the third question, do you think going to college or university is important in the domain of computer science?
Depends on the type of person you are. Overall, I think I'd say yes, because I think most people, it's very hard to be disciplined at like 18 years old in order to like learn programming on your own, right? If you have the opportunity to go to college, I think you definitely should. Now, you don't need to go to college in order to be successful in computer science. I don't think, but I would definitely recommend, especially if you're coming right out of high school, going to college will lead you to learn the basics. Even if the courses aren't the best with the most up-to-date technology, maybe they're teaching you C, right? And you don't want to be in C. I think it's still a good way to learn. And once you learn how to learn in college, and then you get to make a lot of connections.
Exactly.
And just kind of find your way. So I think it's definitely important, but not necessary.
Fair point.
Perfect. Yeah. It gives you the exposure that you need, and then okay, perfect. So
at 18 years old, like I don't think I'd had the discipline in order to become a good developer myself. Only like when I'm talking about like I became entrepreneurial or whatever, that's only my junior year of college, like towards the end. So I was already like 20-ish. And that's only when I started like thinking about this stuff and trying to learn stuff on my own.
That's fair. I mean, same for me. I can't imagine the 17-year-old me learning something sitting in front of the computer for 4 hours. There's no way.
Yeah, unless you're like really, really like highly motivated to do that, I would say college is the easier way.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay, so the final question. What's your favorite programming language? I think we already cracked this one. It's not going to be C.
No, it's actually Dart, not C.
Dart. Oh, okay.
I think C. I like C, and I all the respect to all the C developers, and I would do it again if I had the chance. I actually want to like try to create my own operating system on like an embedded microprocessor with C, which sounds pretty hard. Like I don't know if I'll be able to do it, but like I want to do it as a challenge and all that. But I definitely have fallen in love with Dart, and that's by far my favorite language. I just think it's just as simple as programming could be with like while having all the stuff that you need.
Mm-hmm. That sounds great. Now, before we end the interview, do you want to ask anything to us?
What's your favorite programming language?
Good question.
JavaScript for me.
I'm kind of split, but I would say JavaScript at this point, because JavaScript allowed me to work in the front end, back end, and create native applications. So that's why, as a use case for me in my personal programming experience, I think JavaScript. But
if I could go back and change my answer, now that I've worked with Python as well, like a little bit, I would say Python too.
Okay.
I know it's not as efficient as like your C and C++ and C#, but you can do a lot. I mean, the power that these languages give you could really do a lot in different domains.
That's great. We have 3 different languages: Python, JavaScript, and Dart.
Have you guys ever tried Flutter or Dart?
I haven't. No.
Not yet.
Well,
just saw your videos on that, but never really tried coding with Dart or Flutter. But maybe that would be a good start.
Yeah, I'd be careful to try it, or else Dart's gonna become your favorite new language, and then you got to restart everything.
Maybe we'll try to connect with you again after 1 year and try to get another interview, and then all of us would say Dart is the best language.
Exactly.
Amazing.
It was great talking to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you a lot. It was fun. Yeah.
It was fun talking to you.
Really. And we got a lot of so we did a lot of interviews now, but your answers, especially to the Coders Quattro section, were really unique.
Yes.
So I mean, so it was really nice, and we learned a lot of new things as well.
And we are sure that even the audience would appreciate this as well, because learning and hearing the same thing every time. Although other guests were awesome, but we should hear other opinions as well. Web development and JavaScript are not the only things, although they are very popular and very hot right now. But it was really nice to have another opinion and another thing that people can learn. So again, thank you for that. And we will link to all your socials down in the description. So if anyone wants to connect with you or follow you, they can definitely do that. Thank you very much once again, and until next time.
Awesome. Thank you so much. You guys are great hosts.
Thank you so much.